Alright, so recently I ranked all of the characters in Shinobi's trigger, and since ranking videos seem to do well on my channel, why not do more? Today we're gonna be looking at what the best jutsus are in the attack type class, from worst to best, mainly judging how meta friendly they currently are. Now, without any further ado, let's get into it. At the bottom of the list we have the Summoning Great Snake Jutsu. This jutsu summons a snake that will attack anyone in proximity, dealing 10% damage on impact. This jutsu is okay in base or flag battle, but it just takes way too long to summon, and it's easy to get interrupted while performing this jutsu. There's a lot of better ways to protect the base using the attack class, and that's why this jutsu occupies the last spot. Moving down the list we have Leaf Whirlwind. This jutsu makes you dash forward, low sweeping your enemy, dealing 20% of damage. This attack is fast while also having a pretty low cooldown, making it a pretty decent engagement tool. That being said, it just deals too low damage for an attack type in my opinion. Nowadays, you have a lot of moves as fast as this one, that just deal more damage. Next up on the ranking we have Rasengan. This is a very simple close range jutsu. You create the Rasengan in your right hand and charge the opponent, dealing okay damage. It has decent travel distance and you also get armor while you're dashing forward. It can also be used for movement, but is not as effective as something like Chidori. The damage just isn't enough though in my opinion, especially for attack types, as there's now a lot of jutsus that just deal a lot more damage. Moving down the list we have the Resent Shuriken. This jutsu creates the Resent Shuriken in your right hand, which you then throw at your opponent. This is a decent mid-range attack, as the tracking isn't perfect but it also doesn't take too long to activate. It deals good damage but should mainly be used as a surprise attack, as it can be pretty easily interrupted if the enemy sees you doing it. Next up we have Lightning Blade. Very similar to Chidori, the user charges up Lightning Chakra into their right hand and thrusts at the opponent, dealing around 30% of damage. This is a really reliable close to mid-range attack and deals good damage too. It doesn't give you super armor though, so it can be pretty easily interrupted. Moving down the list we have a ranged jutsu, that being Vanishing Rasengan. This ninjutsu makes you create and throw a Rasengan that vanishes during the flight to the targeted enemy, making it very hard to notice for the opponent. Even though it doesn't exactly travel very fast, I still think this is probably the best base game ranged ninjutsu attack types have, as it doesn't take too long to throw and also deals decent damage. Up next on the list we have Universal Pull. This ninjutsu simply pulls the targeted enemy directly to you and allows you to remove them from certain objectives. It's definitely viable in game modes such as base or flag battle, but nowadays there are probably better tools to achieve the same thing while also dealing damage. Nonetheless, still a very fun jutsu to use. Moving down the list we have another taijutsu, Leaf Flash. This attack makes you launch at your opponent, dealing 20% damage upon impact and bouncing them off the floor. Once again, it's great for combos and has a pretty low cooldown, allowing you to chain it with basic attacks. All of the taijutsu are pretty similar in my opinion, but this one feels much easier to land compared to Leaf Whirlwind, earning it a better spot on the list. Up next we have another jutsu that Rock Lee provides, Leaf Rising Wind. This is basically the same as the last entry, it just knocks the opponent up into the air, making it easier to combo in my opinion. Apart from that, it's just the same jutsu, with a marginally bigger cooldown. Okay, just before continuing, in case you happen to be enjoying the video, I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe, as it helps me out a bunch. We just recently reached 300 subscribers, so thank you all so much. The next goal is 500, and at this stage every single sub helps. So if you don't mind and want to see more content like this, then the sub would be greatly appreciated. Now on to the next entry. Alright, moving down the list we have the Octopus Hawk Jutsu. This jutsu makes you attack the opponent with 2 tentacles, strangling them after you connect. It deals little damage, but most importantly stuns the enemy for a bit, allowing you to continue dealing damage afterwards. It's a decent stun in my opinion, but the damage is just too low, especially for this class, who need as much damage output as they can get. Following up is Tornado High. This attack makes you charge your opponent, dealing damage, and afterwards making a clone that will create a tornado that targets the same opponent. Even though this jutsu is a bit risky as it leaves you wide open during the launch, I still think it's worth it, as overall it deals around 30% if everything hits. Plus it also allows you to continue your combo if you time it correctly after the tornado. Moving down the list we have Acrobat Technique. This jutsu makes you take a special stance where you nullify any hit apart from secret techniques by striking out 16 times. This is the perfect jutsu for when somebody is chasing you, since if you're skilled enough, you can time it so that they will not have enough time to interrupt the pursuit, and they will get caught in the combo. And it deals quite a lot of damage as well. I'm not going to say it's easy to pull off, it's pretty situational but always feels rewarding. Moving down the list we have the Truth-Seeking Scourge. This attack makes you fire off a laser beam in a straight line, dealing a bunch of damage to anyone caught. Even though this jutsu deals a lot of damage, it's just way too inconsistent a hit in my opinion. as if the enemy moves even a little bit, you will not be able to get them. Next up is my favorite taijutsu technique in the game, dynamic entry. It has you back up a little bit and then shoot out with a flying kick towards the targeted opponent, dealing 20% damage on impact, while also giving you a defense boost. It's a very fast jutsu with a really big range too, making it probably the easiest to land out of all of the taijutsus in the game. Not to mention it's an instant guard break, just a perfect quick engagement technique. Following up is Fire Style Burning Ash. This technique makes you spew out ash from your mouth, blinding anyone it hits, and upon second input you can ignite the ash and make it explode. This is in my mind a great jutsu with only one issue. It's sometimes a real struggle to activate the second stage, as there's sometimes a weird delay between when you can use it. Apart from that, when you can actually pull off the trigger, it's a really good AoE attack. Moving on, we have Flying Raijin Jutsu level 2 at number 22. This makes you throw a kunai at the targeted enemy, and if you hit it, teleport above them, smashing them with a Rasengan, dealing around 40% damage in total. First of all, this attack is obviously incredibly cool. Secondly, hitting the kunai is actually pretty easy. By far the worst part of this jutsu is the fact that when you hit it, the enemy can sometimes still get away, but to be honest, it doesn't happen enough for me to not love this jutsu. Moving down, we have the Wood Dragon Jutsu from Hashirama's arsenal. This jutsu creates a wood dragon that flies towards the enemy, dealing roughly 30% damage and sealing the opponent's ninjutsu stocks for a bit. This attack is almost instant when you use it, which in my opinion is its biggest upside. Apart from that, you should stick to mainly using it mid to long range, as it can be a bit unreliable from closer distances. Alright, let's move on to number 20, which is Fire Style Flaming Meteors. It makes you create a shadow clone which continuously fires fireballs at the opponent. A really good jutsu for fighting near objectives or in a team fight, as it's basically like a support turret. It also sometimes forces your opponents to lock onto the clone, making it an even better distraction. It's not super hard to evade it, but it's still annoying. Next up on the list we have the Laughing Buddha Jutsu. It makes you create two big wooden hands that clap, dealing around 40% damage to any enemy caught in it. This is an awesome jutsu for base battle, as the most reliable way to catch someone with it is if they are stationary, because otherwise they can just move away. That being said, it can damage multiple opponents, potentially allowing you to deal massive damage to a lot of players. Next up on the list we have the Teleportation Jutsu. This jutsu does probably what you would expect it to do. It teleports you a short distance, while also giving you a speed and attack buff. The obvious use case of this jutsu lies in flag battle, where it's one of the best tools you have for carrying the flag, as the cooldown and activation time of this jutsu are incredibly low. On top of that, this is also a great ninjutsu for dodging some attacks that are otherwise almost impossible to dodge, such as Majestic Destroyer Flame. Even though this is a base game jutsu, you will see it used by a lot of players, and there's a good reason for that. Following up, we have Lighting Style Lariat. This jutsu charges up your right arm with electricity, making you dash towards the enemy and deal damage on impact. I personally like this jutsu more than Lightning Blade, as it deals more damage and has a longer travel distance. That being said, the wind-up on it is longer, leaving you more vulnerable before the attack, but you do get super armor. Nevertheless, for a base jutsu, this is one of the most consistent damage dealers in my opinion. Moving down, we have Karma Linchpin's Strange Days. This technique has you create an energy sphere in front of you that drains the secret technique gauge of other players while also filling yours. Additionally, it also resets the substitution stock of your enemies if they step in it. This is basically the ultimate counter to many annoying jutsu like Sand Shield or Water Pillar, as it instantly removes them. But it obviously doesn't deal any damage, making it just a utility tool. Nonetheless, if you want to get as many ultimates in a game as possible, this is the way to do it. Okay, following on we have the Piercing One-Fingered Thrust of Hell. This jutsu makes you rear back your left arm and then lunge at your opponent, dealing damage upon contact and lowering their defense for 8 seconds. If you charge up for long enough, you also reach stage 2, at which the jutsu breaks guard and goes through things like Susanoo armor. You also get super armor while charging it, making it pretty hard to stop you. This is like a better version of Lariat, more distance and faster, nothing else to say really. Continuing on is Cross Lantern, which creates a cross on the ground which erupts into lava, dealing damage to anyone caught while also disabling their sub for the next 8 seconds. Even though the cross shape may feel a bit awkward at first, this jutsu is by no means hard to land, and in a crowded area basically guarantees you to deal a bunch of damage to multiple enemies. Probably one of the better AoE attacks in Shinobi Striker in my opinion. Moving down, we have Sukuna Hikona God Hunter. This jutsu makes you shrink down and rush at your opponent, damaging them and keeping them in the air, which allows you to continue your combo. This is a really good engagement jutsu, as you're completely invulnerable while in the shrunken state. It deals decent damage on its own, but most importantly allows you to deal even more with follow-up basic attacks. Up next, we have the iconic Flying Raijin Jutsu. It makes you throw down a kunai, and after a second input of the jutsu button, you teleport to its location. This is obviously great for a flag battle, as you can get a big head start after capturing the flag. But it can also be used as a second substitution, you just have to place the kunai before entering a battle. Alright, coming up next we have Might Guy's Youthful Roar. This jutsu makes you shout out, stunning all close by enemies while also boosting your allies and removing their status ailments. This is one of my favorite stunts in the game, as it's very fast and the range is very good too. The stun time itself isn't the highest, but it's big enough to give you a chance to strike, not to mention you can obviously stun multiple people with it too. Following up, we have Baryon Tailbreaker. It gives you the Kurama Chakra Cloak, which then automatically attacks anyone near you with a cooldown between hits. It's similar to Susanoo armor, even though it's not the perfect defense by any means, but on the other hand, it's amazing with helping you when you're on the attack and in combos. The only annoying part is that it's pretty easy to accidentally cancel it, and you can also not use any ninja tools while using it. Moving down the list, we have Doikakuten Shokatsu, which makes you throw a shrunken stake at your opponent, which if it connects, stuns them and drops a massive cube on them, which deals damage. Even though the tracking on the stake isn't anything amazing, this is still an incredibly consistent hit, and the damage isn't too bad either. It's pretty perfect for finishing off players with low health. Moving on, we have Adult Naruto's first jutsu, Risano Rampage. This technique creates 4 arms, using your Kurama Chakra Cloak, which then attack the enemy each with their respective Rasengan. This is a great attack and deals really high damage too. The only problem is the deceptively shorter range, as the arms can extend quite the distance but not always connect. Apart from that, it just tears enemies to shreds. Up next, we have probably the most versatile jutsu in the game, Uchiha Shuriken Jutsu Oboro Kudama. This technique makes you throw down a Demon Wind Shuriken, which you can then later recall, giving you a speed buff in the process. Now, it may not sound like much, but this jutsu has so many use cases. You can, for example, call it back when you're being attacked to interrupt the enemy, or maybe extend a combo of your own, because when the shuriken hits the opponent, they get stunned and all of their ninjutsu get sealed. It also has other side effects like penetrating sand shield, for example. It's incredibly viable, but it also has a bit of a learning curve, as you don't want to call it prematurely, but apart from that, it's just awesome. Following up is Scientific Ninja Tool Reverse Scale, a 2-stage jutsu that first makes you charge the enemy with your arm as a shield, after which you turn your arm into a scythe, and you can press the jutsu button again, swiping in front of you. This is an incredibly reliable attack, as even if you miss the first part, the secondary one will still get activated. It's also pretty easy to chain them together, since the first hit resets the opponent's sub-stock and also breaks things like Sand Shield. Continuing on, next up we have Almighty Push. This jutsu has been a Shinobi striker staple ever since the game came out in 2018. It creates a shockwave that pushes anyone close to your way while also dealing decent damage. This is still one of the best jutsu for both base and flag battle, as it not only provides incredibly useful utility but also brings decent damage to the table, which is pretty rare to see these days. Up next we have Uchiha style Halo Dance. This is one of the best combo jutsus in the game. It makes you lunge at your opponent, striking out with your sword 3 times, each time teleporting to a different place behind them. It will also disable their substitution after the first hit, meaning they will not be able to escape. This is some of the best guaranteed damage in the game, as landing it is very easy. If finishing off kills is something you struggle with, then this is definitely the jutsu for you. Following up, we have Kurama Twin Impact. It makes you slam the ground with a mini-tailed beast bomb, dealing 25% damage to anyone around, disabling their substitution and even cancelling out super armor. This is one of the best AoE attacks in the game for attack types, as it's super easy to fire off quickly and the range on it isn't anything to scoff at either for a close range jutsu. Use this in a crowded teamfight and you'll immediately be in a winning position. Second on the list, we have a very powerful jutsu, the Sharingan. This eye technique just simply gives you an extra substitution for the next 8 seconds after you use it. It's the perfect jutsu for any 1v1 fight, as it gives you a huge advantage before the battle even begins. Also obviously great for something like flag battle, but as you can imagine, not so good for base battle. And finally, in number 1, we have Baryon Bullet Barrage. This is the ultimate close combat jutsu. It deals amazing damage and also provides you incredible utility. It makes you charge your opponent, pummeling them with a barrage of fists. And for every landed punch, they lose a % of their secret technique gate. Not only that, if you land every punch, you're gonna be dealing around the 40% damage mark, which even for an attack type is a lot of power. Apart from that, it also has amazing tracking and gives you super armor, meaning that it basically cannot be interrupted. Not to mention, it continually resets the opponent's sub. You cannot ask for anything better. Alright, that's all of the jutsu. Let me know in the comments what you do or don't agree with. And if you made it this far, then a like and a subscribe would greatly help me out. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you all soon. Bye!